Now, I know that this video is really, really long for all of you, and I'm sorry about that, but I'd like to help you guys out with the second chapter as well, especially because of the fact that it seemed like a lot of you guys had trouble with, especially with these questions. I'm not sure how you guys will do on these right here because I haven't gotten those back yet at the time of making this video. We will get to those when we get to those. I'm hoping that you guys did good on these two ones, but either way, it will still help you just go through them again. Languages are only really acquired through repetition, and so it's never a bad time to simply just go through the whole thing again. So let's start with Pensum C. So we've been introduced to a bunch of new question words in this chapter. In the first chapter, it was words like quid, ubi, num, things like that. And while we'll still have the question words like ne, meaning just is this the case, and num and esne, again meaning just like is this the case. So num, ne, those all mean the same thing that they did in the last chapter. We also have words like quis, qui, cuius, and quot, or que. Those are all introduced in this chapter. All right, so we need to figure out what do these question words mean, and this is why it's really, really important to understand the chapter before attempting to tackle the pensa. And this reminds me of the fact that I need, if you guys read through the chapter, and especially if it's like your second read through, and you simply don't understand a lot of the words, please email me. Ask me questions. I have no problem with interacting with you guys. In fact, that is something that I particularly enjoy about teaching. So the fact that I cannot do that because of the whole distance learning, it negatively affects me, and as you can probably tell, it's not really helping you guys out either. I'm not saying that you should all come back to school. That's not my point. I'm more of just saying that the more we interact, even if it's just through email, the better. So any questions that you have, please send them to me. So let's first figure out what are the question words. So we have quis. If you could figure that out with the chapter, means who. It's a question. So who is quintus? Quis est quintus? Who is quintus? Qui is the same thing as who, but it's for the plural. So it's like the difference between est and sunt. So quis est quintus, whereas qui sunt medus et davus, who are medus and davus. Now, in this sense, the words actually sort of mean what. So what is quintus, because you're asking what type of person he is. Then with the next one, in this chapter, so in the first chapter, the only words which had a ne at the end were est and sunt, but now we're learning in this chapter that, you can actually put ne at the end of other words too. So Marcus ne. Now Marcus ne is not a person. Marcus ne is Marcus plus ne, which just means that the sentence is a question. So Marcus ne quoque servus Julii est? So the only way to really figure out this question is quis est quintus? Who is quintus, or what is quintus? And if you go back to the beginning of the chapter, where you'll find quintus is a puer Romanus. So that's what you would put. Quintus puer Romanus est. Then qui sunt medus et davus? Well, if you go back to the beginning of the chapter, you'll see that medus et davus are servi, or slaves, to use the English word. So qui sunt medus et davus? Medus et davus sunt servi. That would be how you would answer this question. Marcus ne quoque servus Julii est? Well, okay, so now we need to figure out, so now we know the question word is this the case about Marcus, that quoque servus Julii? What does quoque mean? Well, if you remember from the first chapter, quoque means also. So the question would read, is Marcus also the slave of Julius? So I guess the question is really asking, who are medus indavus sunt servi Julii, because that's what the second question entails, or the third question entails, servus Julii. So is Marcus also a servant or slave of Julius? And then the answer to that would be obviously Marcus non servus Julii, sed filius Julii. So cuius filia est Julia. So what does cuius mean? Cuius is one of those difficult words. So quis and qui, those are relatively easy to understand. Cuius takes the more difficult question word of quis and qui, and you add the concept of the genitive to it. And I found both in class and while grading a lot of the remote stuff that it's a very difficult concept. So what cuius means, and feel free to write this down, memorize it, and embroider it into your pillow, inscribe it into your brain, do all the things that you possibly can to memorize this simple translation. Cuius means of whom or of what. Or the other way you can translate it is by just simply saying whose. So W-H-O-S-E, whose, not W-H-O''S, which would mean who is. So cuius filia est Julia, whose daughter is Julia, or of whom is Julia the daughter. That might sound a little clunky, but I hope that makes sense. So whose daughter is Julia? And the answer to that question is Julia est filia Julii, or Aemilia, or Aemiliae, whichever parent you want to choose. Or you can even say Julii et Aemiliae. Or, because of the fact that que is introduced in the chapter, you can say Julii Aemiliaeque. All right, so moving on, and I'll just do this one, and then I want you guys to do the rest of them. Quot liberi sunt in familia Julii. How many? So if you remember quote, quote is another word which I wouldn't be surprised if many of you looked up. Quote means how many. So quote liberi sunt in familia Julii. How many, liberi means children, are in the family of Julius. You remember that Julii, the E ending here, it doesn't mean plural, it rather means the genitive. So, quote, liberi sunt in familia Julii. How many children are in the family of Julius? And the answer to that question is 3. You can find that out by just simply going back to the chapter. Now, for the next one, most of you got that one wrong, so because you were relying on the picture. So I would suggest going back and carefully rereading the chapter, especially this part here, the part right before the liber tuus Latinus. All right. Now, at long last, we are on the home stretch with all of these exercises. I know it's a really, really long video, and I know I probably haven't been the most entertaining. I hope I have at least been able to be helpful to you guys. Let's go through what the Grammatica Latina is. So in this chapter, we have 2 different concepts being introduced. First is the concept of the 3 genders, which you kind of already knew because of the fact that you had to distinguish between us words, a words, and words in the last chapter. So us means that the word is masculine. It says servus est vocabulum masculinum, and ancilla est vocabulum femininum. Now, whenever you see these quotes here, it means that you're just talking about the word. You're not talking about what the word means. So it's not slaves, or slave is a masculine vocabulary word. Rather, it's saying the word servus is a masculine vocabulary word, and the word ancilla, rather than a handmaid, is a feminine vocabulary word, or a city is a neuter vocabulary word. Rather, it's saying the word ancilla or the word oppidum is a feminine or neuter vocabulary word. So then it gives a bunch of examples. That should be relatively easy to understand. Then we have the genitive. So genitivus is the Latin word for genitive, and you can see that it's sort of marked out by GEN. So masculinum Iulius Dominus servi, that is Davi est. Now again, as I sort of explained with the grammar, in the video where I went over grammar, this is you can tell that it is genitive by the fact that despite it matching with the plural, it's only talking about one servus. And then the plural would be aurum, and it's the same thing along those lines. But let's get to the juicy part. Let's get to the pensum a. So Marcus, Filius. It would either be Filius or Filia. So which one would it be? Well, Marcus is a boy, so it would be masculine. So that would mean that it would have to be Marcus Filius Iulii est. Julia, okay, again, Filius or Filia. So Julia is a feminine word, so it would be Julia Filia Iulii est. Julius est vir Roman. Well, would it be Romanus, Romana, or Romanum? Well, we're not talking about a city, where we're not talking about any of these neuter words, so we can roll out that means Romanum, and Julius is obviously a man, and vir is obviously a masculine word since it means man. So Julius est vir Romanus. Aemilia femina. Femina is naturally just a feminine word. It's practically in the name, feminine, femina. So Aemilia femina Romana est. Julius, it's either Dominus or Domina. So again, masculine word. So Dominus. Aemilia domina est. Medus servus Graecus est. Delia est ancilla Graeca. Sparta opidum Graecum. All right. So that is that's the first part. Let me just tackle a couple of sentences in the second paragraph. So Julius pater is it Marcus or Marci? Now we're in the genitive part. So we need to get used to using the genitive forms of the verbs. So Julius pater, is it Marcus or Marci? Well, it wouldn't really make sense to say Julius is the father Marcus. That doesn't make much sense. So instead, it must mean Julius is the father of Marcus. Again, pater, filius, dominus, servus, all these words are relational, and so they need someone to be the father of someone, and that's where the genitive comes in. So now it would be Julius pater Marci or Marci est. Marcus est filius Julii et Aemiliae. So that would, you put an AE here, you would put an I there. So Marcus est filius Julii et Aemiliae. Medus servus Julii est. Julius est dominus servorum, or servi. Either one of those would be possible. Julius dominus medi et Davi est. Julius dominus servorum est. In fact, it's probably servi because it's only talking about one servant here. So then start here at numerus serv something magnus est, and then just continue out from there until you get to the end of this part of the paragraph. So then for pensum B, and yes, I know that you all did this last week, I'm sorry, but I do have to assign them again just to make sure that we are all proficient in even just knowing how to complete these assignments. Again, I'm sorry for this being such a long video, but it needed to be done. So again, we have our word bank here. So Marcus something Romanus est. Okay, so what kind of word? So this would have to be a noun since Romanus is an adjective. So Marcus something Romanus est. Is Marcus a filius Romanus? Well, that doesn't really make. Is he a Roman son? I mean, I guess you could say that. That doesn't really make much sense, though, and it doesn't really seem to be what the chapter was talking about at the beginning. So Marcus est puer Romanus. Oh, well, there's the sentence right there. So let's go back to the pensum B. So puer probably is what this word would be. Then Julius something Romanus est. Well, if this is puer, then it's probably one of these 4 words. And so Julius is not a femina, he's not a woman, and he's definitely not a puella, a girl, and he's not a puer. In fact, the text specifically says he's not a puer, so he's probably a vir. So Julius vir Romanus est. Emilia est something Romana. Well, again, let's follow the trend. Which one of these words is it? Is she a puella? No, she's not a puella. She is a femina, a woman. Emilia est femina Romana. Then Julius est something Marci et Quinti et Juliae. Well, what is Julius of Marcus and Quintus and Juliae? Is he the vir? No, that's not quite it. Is he the dominus? No, that's not it either. So what's probably talking about is pater. Julius est pater Marci et Quinti et Juliae. And that makes sense. Julius is the father of Marcus and Quintus and Juliae. In something, Julii sunt tres something, duo something, et una something. Well, there is actually almost an exact replica of the sentence. So let's try to go back and see what it was. Let's see. Over here. In familia Julii sunt tres liberi, duo filii et una filia. All right, so that's probably what this sentence comes from. In familia Julii sunt tres liberi, duo filii et una filia. In the family of Julius, there are 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. All right. So this one would be something librorum est Emilia. So what is Emilia of the children? She is the mother of the children. Okay, so that's all I think that needs to be said about for an introduction of this. Hopefully you guys will be able to figure out the rest. Again, I'm sorry for those of you who have completed everything and gotten it all right and all that stuff. It's but I do want us to get through all of this. I know I made you sit through a very long video. As far as I've heard, the other classes have much longer videos. Hopefully we won't have to do anything like this again. That will partially depend on your work. Yeah. All right. So now we are all done, and now you can get to just finishing up these last couple of things. Have a good day.